Peace, everyone, and welcome to another edition of March 4th, focusing on Father Divine's letters, this time on the theme of healing and health. We'll be using these letters to introduce some of the key principles of Father Divine's written teaching and to dispel some misconceptions, some common misconceptions about Father Divine's teaching regarding healing and medical intervention. Father's letters about democracy are long. They're sometimes 3 or 4 pages. His letters about health and healing are usually very short and to the point. And I think we have 9 or 10 today, 9 I believe, and they illustrate the point quite well. Father emphasizes the importance of faith and contact with the Spirit, the injunction to use physicians if there is any doubt or if a condition persists for more than 3 days, in cases of coma and mental illness, and more in today's letters. In other letters in the future, not included today, we will also see that Father instructs those with child, elder, or disabled dependents to not rely on their personal faith, but to always quickly and responsibly make recourse to medical science, to not gamble someone else's fate on your personal faith, but to make recourse to the best available remedies. In future letters, we will also see that Father validates and endorses public health measures, including food handler requirements, food recalls when food is contaminated or when there is some pathogen in an animal-based food supply, for example, agricultural quarantines in those instances as well, the mandatory quarantining of people with tuberculosis, which was at one time very prevalent in the United States, and at least some vaccinations. It is important to note that Father also endorses the idea that whenever medical recourse is mandated by law, physicians and other providers should be held accountable and liable for any harm caused, and only paid if treatment is successful. Those are, in fact, points developed in Father Divine's Righteous Government platform and in discourses that Father gave pertaining to those concepts and that platform. Father would also say, I believe, that healthcare providers should be motivated by the desire to serve common interests, because he says that of all of us, not private financial gain or social status. Father would also say that providers should provide regardless of the race or creed or complexion or nationality, etc., of the patient, and not confine their practice to one group. And like peace mission businesses, should have sliding scales that accommodate all incomes, including those unable to pay. Implementation of these general principles, spoken of by Father Divine and modeled by Father Divine in actual practice and in his advice to others, implementation of these principles would free us from much of the corporatism and self-interested motivations that have corrupted and overpriced medical care in the United States, which, in the hands of corporations rather than the people's democracy, will always serve money interests over social interest and have the potential to exploit the sick instead of assist them compassionately. Also, in other letters and messages that we hope to include in future March 4th episodes, we will see that Father urges us, when we do make recourse to doctors, to do the spiritual practice of intentionally seeing God in the provider, thereby making mental contact with the divine within that particular person, the divine who is the source of all skill, all knowledge, and all compassion. Similarly, there are letters where Father urges us to apply this principle if we must appear before a judge, or when dealing with others in secular professions, when taking a driver's exam, for example, in any context, really. This does not mean that we ignore the human fallibility of the person and trust everything they say as though God, Father Divine, is saying it, or that we become servile or submit to bad advice or to injustice. But it does mean that we choose to focus on the divine spark in them and the divine presence in the situation, and not the mortal ego of the provider. And when we do that, we trust that Father can reach them in his own way, in a way that's appropriate to them, and work through them for the benefit of all concerned. In these letters, you will also notice that Father's signature sometimes includes the letters MSD or MSD-DD, which were honorary degrees conferred by Northwestern College, a small college that once existed in Washington, D.C., but which has since been absorbed or merged into other institutions. I believe that was around 1948. I would have to look for the dates to be sure. There were two separate occasions. So for a short period, Father would sign sometimes with MSD, and then not long thereafter, a second honorary degree, DD, was added. And those stand for Doctor of Metaphysics and Doctor of Divinity, respectively. In the next scheduled video, we will introduce some of Father's concepts that are very closely related. Father's very strong and sometimes surprisingly strong endorsements of science and technology as manifesting the mind of God in the world of matter, for the purpose of benefiting human beings. Father emphasizes that science and technology should be used in consciousness of the good and not for private financial interests, only collective abundance, collective freedom from labor when technology has that potential, so forth. And of course, those injunctions and advice relative to science apply very strongly to the medical and healthcare professions in all of the various fields. Father differs from materialism in science and in evolution in insisting that what we call matter has its origins in spirit and consciousness. It is spirit and consciousness that cause the appearance of matter to come into being, that cause us to enter into it and to evolve through it from insentience, ignorance, to everything, from nothing to everything, from non-existence to the existence of the Godhead, God reproducing after their own kind. The body is a projection of one's consciousness, and so the state or health of the body is a projection of one's own consciousness, and the world is a projection of our collective consciousness, including the legacies of ancestors whose very bodies form the living earth, who form the soil, the mineral composition, the gases of the atmosphere. All of this is a legacy of the past embodiment of living beings, working out slowly over eons their own salvation. The seed or germ, to use Father's term that appears in one of these letters, the germ of disease and death, are first and foremost in consciousness, out of unity with God and out of harmony with nature. If the root causes in consciousness can truly be eliminated, then, and not merely plastered over or bypassed, then the consequences can be eliminated in experience. That is the guiding principle in these cases. It's important to draw attention to these facts, and one of the reasons that I'm consulting a script today to get things, to make sure I'm including everything that I think should be included. It's important to draw attention to these facts because many people falsely believe that Father Divine forbade followers to use doctors or medicine, and nothing could be further from the truth. That is a gross misconception. It is true that many early converts to Father's teaching were coming out of Christian Science, which had prepared them to understand certain concepts that Father was teaching. And some of those brought Christian Science errors or excesses with them. Out of many thousands of followers and people inspired by Father Divine over many, many years, a few have either not known the full teaching or have misunderstood it or abused it, with disastrous results for themselves or their dependents. These people may have feared disease, they may have feared cost, they may have feared confronting mortality, they may have feared medical intervention in general, or have had past traumatic experiences with doctors and hospitals, or in some cases were mentally ill. But their missteps were not because they were following Father Divine's advice or teaching. They were not. By extension, the 3-day principle that Father applies tells us that anyone persisting in illness beyond that 72-hour limit is manifestly not able, for whatever reason, to be healed. For that person to persist beyond this is defying Father, and it is a form of self-exaltation and pride. The kind of pride that comes before fall. And in these kind of medical cases, that fall is often sickness or death. Father said more than once, it is better to go to the physician than to the undertaker. And certainly the principle would apply that it is better to intervene practically and soon than late and to suffer greater harm or greater cost. One should not be upset if it is necessary for them to use a doctor, but rather they should recognize that we approach God by degrees. Father emphasizes that all things are by degrees, by steps, by increment, toward the kind of faith, ultimately, that can move any mountain. But we only get there through many experiences and through many lives, and it can be presumptuous to assume that we are there now. So Father gives that 3-day rule to be a check on oneself if one is manifesting an illness. Beyond that period, go to the doctor. It's clear. Faith can also be expressed, perhaps at a lesser degree, but still faith being expressed through faith in God, manifest as the knowledge and skill of the doctor or the judge or the interviewer, etc. Seeing God in all really is the ultimate summation of the whole teaching and practice of Father Divine. So it might not even be a lower degree at all, depending how the faithful patient engages the experience. That's what matters, the consciousness with which one approaches it. After all, Father and Mother Divine themselves personally made recourse to physicians, doctors, and other kinds of related specialists, albeit sparingly. And they certainly did not dwell in identification with an illness or any of the challenges that came with a physical illness. They modeled how to think constructively and not be weighed down heavily in a manner that cannot assist in healing. And Mother Divine also wore glasses when it was necessary to do so. So we are to see God in the doctor, in the judge, in the teacher, in the spouse, in the child, in the parent or guardian, in any and all others. There are letters in which Father gives just that advice in each one of those kinds of instances. And over time we will see those. Sometimes our effort to see God in others actually does touch the other person in some kind of resonant way, influential way. And that can even have a kind of spiritually quickening or awakening impact on them, even though we're not going about it in some kind of preachy or proselytizing or heavy-handed way. Father tells us not to proselytize. It's something done privately and internally when we're in those situations, and expressed in our behavior, our manner, and our actions, but not in any kind of bizarre way that draws attention to the effort to see God. One of the reasons this practice of trying to see God in others is so central is that the root of the sin of Eden, and therefore all other sins, was dividing and absenting God by asserting separation into self and other, viewing others, therefore, as objects of desire and exploitable. Not only does this lead to the alienation of Adam and Eve from the presence of God, but in the next generation results in the murder of Abel by Cain, and a little later on in the legalistic contractual exploitation of Esau and the theft of his inheritance by Jacob. So it goes from the initial sin to an act of murder to an act of legalistic contract exploitation. If we have reached the goal of true unity, which is ultimately unity with God as in the beginning, then we are in unity with absolutely every being and can exclude none, but rather see only God in them. To be spiritual is to see God alone, one consciousness, or at least to strive to see God alone, and to practice remembrance of God so that we are progressing toward that. Father says that to the spiritual man all things are spiritual, and that's part of what that means. God alone, one consciousness that we borrow from, one I am that we borrow from, is real. One God is real, and God alone reigns. When we see anything other than God or serve any other regency, including self, we are living in mortality. If there is any master over you other than God, you are living in carnality and mortality. In all things and persons, one God and only God is present and real and enacting all roles. Nothing else is real. The self ultimately is the other fellow, and the self is ultimately not real because it holds itself in separation from God. The reality is a provisional self we make through concentrated spiritual practice over multiple lives, facilitated by the love, grace, and empowerment of God. It's also important to point out, as one of today's letters demonstrates clearly, that Father does not use conventional or material methods. He asserts, "It is nothing I do as a person," frequently in his messages, but rather that healing is drawn from the impersonal principle and the ideal attributes of the Godhead, which he does manifest and personify and draw our attention to. He is the gateway, the key into that reality. And he and Mother show us through perfect example how to do it. He did not hold healing services. He did not pray over people. He did not lay hands on people. He did not anoint people. He did not send anointed cloths or amulets or trinkets or special prayers or anything of the sort. It is strictly an internal phenomena of making individual contact with the mind and spirit of God. While one does not have to know or particularly honor Father's person to contact God through other religious practices, it does not help anyone if they are intentionally antagonistic or disrespectful to Father and Mother, because they do personify the principles of life and well-being in themselves. So to attack them is to attack the result you say you desire, whether you know that or not. And so there can be a recursion. This is part of what it means to say Father Divine is a live wire, and like electricity, if he is mishandled, there can be consequences. It's not a matter of him willfully producing those in some vengeful way, but when you go against the spirit of life, you inherit death. I am health for you, Father says. I am life for you, I am success for you, but among those things, I am health for you. Paradoxically, it is because Father and Mother personally take on so-called old age, disease, and death that we know they are truly with us. They condescend to experience what we experience, and they work to lighten our burden and extend our deadline, buying us time and opportunity and grace through their own willing sacrifice. They don't ask us to do anything that they themselves do not do. Father chose to live a very long and healthy life, and then to endure a prolonged seclusion and sacrifice. And Mother in both bodies repeated the same pattern. Because of this, we know he came as a preserver and maintainer of the world. He reproduced the sacrifice of Jesus 33 times and demonstrated his profound survival and continued ability to embody and personify himself in just the same form, and Mother as well. This is ongoing, and people experience this phenomena of actually seeing and interacting with Father and Mother Divine in real and solid material bodies. Many people report this experience. He is a merciful God who reaches us where we are, as we are, who goes even beneath our condition to lift us into higher consciousness and ultimately into his own divine infinity, which, putting aside egoic self, we will inherit. Father Divine shall not fail in even a single instance, though it take 1,000,000,000,000 years. He shall rescue every divine spark and restore it to himself. All things are on schedule. All things are happening and unfolding by degrees, absolutely according to plan. If we think they are not, then we haven't understood the plan. If we think that things are not unfolding as they should, we have not understood what Father Divine is teaching us. See God in all things and forget mortality, starting with the self, but in all things, forget mortality. The age of mortality is over. It ended. Its last day, the last day of mortality, was March the 4th, 2017. So in general, Father endorsed focus on God, personal and public virtue, cultivation of felt gratitude and praise, love, peace, healthy pleasures, including good, healthy food, inspiring music, beautiful and peaceful surroundings, a balance of work and rest and recreation, human dignity, universal human dignity, having basic needs met, community, usefulness, curiosity, zest for life, and ongoing personal development. He emphasized all these things as components to what makes for a healthy life. These are all foundational to good health, and Father wishes them for everyone and intends to bring about such universal enfranchisement here on this earth and in this present age. So on these matters of health and healing and going to doctors, etc., it is very important to always try to see everything you can that Father says about any given topic. Many people, including sloppy scholars and including some followers, hear just one message or read just one excerpt and latch on to that and falsely conclude that that one line of text is typical and decisive. Often, it is merely one facet of something more complex, and Father may provide other details elsewhere that provide a more balanced view of that topic. Father is falsely perceived as rigid or one-sided on many topics, where he actually demonstrated great breadth and great subtlety and nuance, and great adaptability to the conditions of each and every case that presented itself before him. Medical intervention is one such area, but only one. Before it was called positive thinking or new thought, it was called constructive idealism, and I think that's a better and more accurate name, and I think the health issues are an area where constructive idealism is pragmatic and practical and easy to understand. We would all prefer to go to the physician than to the undertaker. So we have to apply these principles constructively and wisely and not rely on our own understanding. And when the results are not constructive, we may know with certainty that we have either misunderstood or misapplied the principle. If you've been working for more than 3 days to be healed and you are not healed, there is something you do not understand about the teaching regarding healing and what you should and should not do. Father says, go to the doctor. If you don't, you are defying God. So, without further ado, here are about 9 letters directly from Father Divine on these subjects. And there will be many more in future episodes with much less verbiage in front. Peace. Thank you, and thank Father, Mother Divine. Peace. December the 5th, 1948, ADFT. Father Divine writing to Miss Edith Birch of Melbourne, Australia. My dear Mrs. Birch, your letter of the most recent date is at hand, and if you have the faith to receive it, you can be healed. Daily I am speaking into expression good health, good will, a good appetite, good manners, and good behavior, all success and all prosperity. These and all other blessings I am freely giving to all who will but accept of them. My words are spirit and they are life, hence that which I promise I am able to fulfill. Therefore, if you can but believe it with substantiated faith and unshaken confidence, you can be made whole. With best wishes and many blessings to you and all who are concerned, this leaves me as I am, well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, MSD, DD, better known as Father Divine. Peace. January 27th, 1948, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Mr. Howard B. Bishop of Summit, New Jersey. My dear Mr. Bishop, I am writing to acknowledge receipt of your letter of the 15th and to thank you for the can of Provic. Although I stress in my talks the use of substantial and nourishing food for the physical body, I know that one's physical health is directly the result of one's mental and spiritual reflection. Medical science today has learned that if an individual is hateful, resentful, angry, and so forth, these evils are reproduced in his physical system in forms of sickness and disease. The reverse is equally true. As I produce the positive mind and spirit, I am, as this leaves me, and as I would that you and all might be, well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am the Reverend M.J. Devine, M.S.D., better known as Father Divine. Peace, June 13th, 1944, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Mrs. Lavinia Barnes of Angleton, Texas. My dear Mrs. Barnes, I received your letter of the 3rd and wish to say, according to my word, as you have been reading my messages now for several months, you will find, as you put my teaching into your daily affairs, the spirit of my presence and the presence of my spirit will give you a new birth of freedom from every angle expressible. Now I need not send you an anointed cloth or anything of that sort, for I do not heal by the material methods of men, as in the days or dispensation of Jesus. My spirit will free you as you reach out in faith, for my spiritual healing will effect a greater cure than what you could get by material remedies. Is it not given? It is not by power, nor by might, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. So it matters not what your complaint may be, neither how long it has been existing. Through your faith in me it will disappear, for God is the great physician that will heal you according to your faith. Thus live the life, and I will be with you and yours, wherein I would that you might be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Devine, better known as Father Divine. March 11, 1947, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Miss Portia Nell of Brooklyn, New York. My dear Mrs. Nell, your letter of the 2nd is received, and I am replying to say, the healing of your child will come about as you perfect your life in me. By your faith and by your wholehearted consecration to God, you allow my spirit to have free access to dwell in you and yours, and you permit my creative spirit to recreate new limbs and veins and bones and tissues, whatsoever is needed, for the healing of the child. Thus it is good to stay your mind on me and gaze vividly and sincerely in the positive direction, that you may bring forth the positive results you seek. For with God all things are possible. With every good wish to you and yours, this leaves me as I am, well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Devine, better known as Father Divine. Peace, August 17, 1945, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Mrs. Carrie Wilson of Darlington, South Carolina. My dear Mrs. Wilson, your letter of the 14th is at hand concerning the condition of your husband's eyes, and I am replying to say, through the preachment of the life and the teaching of the Christ, I am showing the people that the purification of their mental and spiritual thoughts, ideas, and opinions means the purification of their physical bodies. Therefore, in order to get rid of the diseased germ, it is essential that your husband reaches out in faith and brings his life into subjection to my spirit and my mind and to my life of righteousness, even as you find it portrayed through my messages in the new day. As millions have been abundantly blessed and healed of all manner of sickness and diseases, so can your husband be cured of his complaint if he will trust in my name wholeheartedly. Thus I would that he might be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. Peace, May 25, 1945, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Mr. Morris Lee of Newark, New Jersey. My dear Mr. Lee, I received your letter of the 21st concerning the sister in Greystone Park, and write to say, as you have observed through my messages, it is faith that will bring her out. If she is able to comprehend my teaching, tell her of me, and if she is able to understand anything, read her my messages or give her the new day. If she is not able to learn of me consciously, then you must reach her by your faith, for your faith transmitted to her will bring about the healing you seek for her. Faith is a marvelous attribute of God, and if you will hold fast to it through your belief and trust in my name, the sister can and will be restored. Thus, wishing you and yours every blessing, this leaves me as I am, well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. Peace, July the 5th, 1944, ADFT. Father Divine writing to Mr. William S. Bishop of New York City, New York. My dear Mr. Bishop, I received your letter of the 4th concerning the mental affliction of your wife, and am replying to say, it is good when you know that God is ever present and able to bring about the healing of the ills of mankind. Yet it is better to bring your life into this light and life of holiness, that you may enjoy the desirable blessings of health, success, and prosperity. However, since your wife has become mentally afflicted, have faith. Transmit the same to your wife, if she is not able to comprehend anything at this time. However, since your wife has become mentally afflicted, have faith. Transmit the same to your wife if she is not able to comprehend anything at this time. Your faith can bring her out, for if you trust me implicitly, my spirit will go forth and fulfill your prayers. Read my messages, imbibe my words, and live the life, and herein you will find the fulfillment of all your joys, such as the world cannot give. For in my life there is no end to the blessings, and you can become to be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. Peace, March 14, 1945, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Miss Mary E. Templeton of Cordonald, Glasgow, Scotland. My dear Miss Templeton, your letter of the 12th ultimo has just come to hand, and I am responding to say, your sister can and will be healed, if she will keep the faith and live the life of Christ. However, as I have often said, if a person does not have sufficient faith to make the necessary mental and spiritual contact with me for a healing within 3 days, he can and should seek the assistance of a physician. For I can work through the physician to reach the condition if the person will keep the faith. Hence, you need not be concerned because it has been necessary to call a physician, but eradicate the cause by living the life of Christ continually, that you and all who are concerned may become to be, even as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. And here's one as published in the New Day under the heading, Concerning Healing. Father directs that it is not his will that anyone should suffer, if medical skill can alleviate his suffering. Peace. January 28, 1943 ADFD, Father Divine writing to Miss Grace of Melbourne, Australia. My dear Miss Grace, your letter of past date has just come to hand for reply, and I am glad to know that many are being blessed through their faith in me. I continue to repeat, the spirit of the consciousness of the presence of God is the source of all supply, and it can, and it will, and it does satisfy every good desire. Nevertheless, as I have frequently said, if for any cause you cannot make your contact to receive the healing you seek within 3 days, you should seek the advice of a physician. Hence, you need not feel as though you should be condemned, for it is not my spirit nor my mind that anyone should suffer, if medical skill can alleviate their suffering. However, these conditions come upon you again after you have been healed once, because you fail to continue to praise God, as you did when you first contacted me. Faith is the key of heaven. Praise unlocks the door. But when you allow criticism, envy, malice, resentment, and every other detestable tendency of mortality to cut off your contact with your Creator, naturally you cannot expect to receive the same blessings you did when through consecration you gave your minds and attention, love and devotion, ideas and opinions to God. As you renew your covenant with God and live accordingly, He will fulfill His promises to you, and you will be even as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine.